we're finally here. It's harvest time. It's September, actually late September. It's been a dry fall. Everything's kind of come out of the field pretty quick in this area of Arkansas. And we're, like I said, we're finally here with corn to harvest. Y'all know, as we've talked about in earlier videos about the corn and all the different stages as it goes through, and actually had some corn that we looked at before, the early stages of milk stage. Now the corn's mature that we're going to look at in the field. We're actually going to harvest. That corn is now mature. As you can see, it'll come off of the cob really easy. This corn's actually dry. When we began picking, the corn's around 18% moisture, which means it has 18% water content. And but we're now at or below dry, which is 15% moisture. But the crop is fully matured, had a good growing season this year, not too much rain early. Had rains throughout the year. Of course, as we've talked about, we irrigate all the corn, but just had a good year overall for corn production. This is a mature cob with the corn on it. It's actually dented like we talked about earlier, I believe, about the corn as it matures. It dents or the moisture comes out of it. And actually an interesting thing in this field where we'd changed from another field, if you didn't know it, there's two types of corn cobs. One is red and another is white. And if you had never seen a white corn cob, there they are. So in the varieties that we grow, they actually do have some that have white cobs. When it dries out, the kernels become hard themselves. To make them edible for most animals, these cobs or this corn is actually ground and made into feed. If you grind this corn, there's two different contents to it. One is actually the meal that you get from it when you actually grind it, and there's actually oil in it. From here it'll be crushed, ground, and made into the different products that you may eat, use, or fuels your car every day. This corn that we have been showing you all year is actually a field corn. It is, once it matures, you know, it's not something that humans eat straight like this, of course, but there is a hominy corn that is soaked in different forms, but soaked in water, and actually is something that's human consumption. You can buy it at the grocery stores today. Then there is sweet corn. Now, sweet corn is corn that it's a totally different product. You eat it off the cob or cut it off the cob, and it's before it matures to this stage. It would actually be in the stage that we looked at earlier where this field corn was in. It's like in a dough stage where you eat corn on the cob. That's a totally different corn. It's similar to this. You could eat this off the cob at that same stage, but this does not have that same sweet flavor to it as a sweet corn does. All right, again, as we talked about earlier, we actually had some real late corn that we planted just to be able to look at the two together. As the corn, when it's green in the field, after it's pollinated, the silks die. The silks, as each one goes to each kernel to pollinate it, and the corn's green. Then it goes through a stage of maturing, and the plant actually dies. The corn plant itself will be green for a long time, and then it starts to mature, and the kernels actually themselves start to mature, and there's what's called a black layer that each little kernel will form, and it'll form this black layer, and therefore it don't take in any more water or nutrients. And as you can see how this plant and the ears are now fully mature, the plant dies, the corn is ready to harvest. At this stage, you want to be able to get the corn harvested because it is subject to the wind or storms at this point where the stalk will break over, and then you have lodged corn to be able to pick up off the ground, and you can actually lose yield during that process. But the corn is mature, ready for harvest. Once the corn is ready to harvest, we come in with the combine, the header. This actually takes the corn, the header that we have, takes the corn down to the ground, chops the stalk up, so that that stalk then is what we would call organic matter, goes back into the ground. And as you'll see in this video, the stalk, the shucks that's on the corn, that's called a shuck, that's covering the corn, will all return to the ground. We actually plant a cover crop then, and that helps that decompose, or that decays or rots. And this stalk, actually, we put fertilizer on the ground to grow this crop, but this stalk actually has nutrients in it then. It has phosphorus and potassium in it, and there's so many pounds of that per acre that is returned into the soil for the next year's crop. Whether you rotate your crop to soybeans or back to corn, we're returning that residue back into the ground, and helps continue to generate life for the soil itself through microbes and different things that decay that stalk back into the ground. That cover crop and the residue that's there helps protect the soil during winter, so you do not have erosion, and that in turn leads us back to the planting, as you've seen in one of the first videos. That planting, going in there with the planter with the no-till attachments on it and without working the ground, the more that we can reuse our resources that are actually in the field, like the crop residue itself, the less trips we make over the field. We save fuel, time in doing that. So it's kind of a cycle that we do, and try to do the least amount that we can as far as using other resources to produce a crop, and to still get the maximum yield that we can get out of that crop. We're going to talk about how we actually get the corn off of the cob, and that's we do that with a combine. As I told you before, for picking corn, we actually have a different header that goes on the combine or platform, and a corn header works in a way that it actually, as it approaches the stalk, it has chains and rollers that actually grab a hold of the stalk, pulls the stalk down, but the ear comes off when it does that, and what's called a deck plate, and that is jerked down, as you'll see in the next part of this video, and that cob actually goes in the header. It's carried up through the throat of the combine into the thrashing part of the combine, into the grain bin, and then when we have a full bin of corn, we dump that on a grain buggy, and then onto a truck, and then onto the elevator to the grain bin, as we do. So there's a lot to the corn header. It's very complex in how that it actually works to be able to do all that process and keep the corn on the cob during that, to get it into the threshing part of the combine. As I said, this is corn header is quite complex in how that it actually works. That it pulls the stalk in with these chains, gets a hold of the stalk. This will be down on the ground or close to it. It actually pulls the stalk in, and at the same time there's a set of rollers in here below this deck plate that actually jerks the stalk down. These deck plates keep the cob from going through them. They're in close proximity. These are actually automatic deck plates on this type of header. Jerks the ear down. The chains then carry the ear up. This header itself is a chopping corn head. It actually has two sets of blades like a mower. It chops the stalk into 3 or 4 or 5 inch blocks and puts it on the ground, as you'll see in the field. But there's a lot goes on when it's thrashing. You'll see that in the video.
Okay, so now we're in the grain cart and we use it so that the combine driver does not have to haul it all the way to the truck and then come back and pick some more. It just makes it more easier on him and more efficient, and we can hold 2 of his bins full, so then by the time we get 2 full, we can take it to the truck and it will fill up half of the truck. So with 2 buggy fulls, we can fill up a whole truck, and then that can be taken to the grain bin, and then the next truck can be filled.
The grain cart will dump on the semi or the hopper bottom trailer, and that's how we transport the corn from the field to the elevator. And it goes from the elevator into the grain bin. So we have 3 or 4 semis on our farm, and they're constantly going back and forth from the grain bins to the field, transporting the corn. So if you don't have grain bins, like sometimes we'll haul straight out of the field, you put it on a truck and you'll go straight to the elevator, whether that be, you know, for us, Corning or Newark to Pico, and for rice, you might load a truck and go straight to Jonesboro to Riceland and unload. At the first of our videos, we were talking about planting. We were showing putting seed in the ground. You go through all the summer of irrigation that we talked about in our previous videos, and now we're here to harvest. And this is kind of our end gate in sorts. You know, get it in the bin, then you still got to haul it out, but once it's out of the field, you have a more peace of mind about harvest. This year, harvest has been very favorable. It's very dry conditions. As you can see, you know, the ground's extremely dry. You can put the truck where you want to. You know, when it's wet, it's a challenge. You have to keep the truck on the road or load in the gravel road. But this year, all in all, our harvest has been very favorable. Although our corn is harvested and in the bins, you know, that's not the end of it. Maybe in upcoming videos, we can see where that corn ends up, whether it's at a river location or at a feed mill to feed an animal.